Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. Next month is UFC 270, the next UFC pay-per-view. The main event is Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane. The co-main event is Brandon Moreno versus Deiveson Figueiredo 3. But there's been some recent changes to this card. I'm going to go over them in a second, but the card leaves a lot to be desired. I love the main event. The co-main event is decent, but the card itself leaves a lot to be desired, and I really believe there's a chance on relatively short notice, because this fight card is a little over a month away, that the UFC could add a massive fight to the main card of UFC 270 and really help it draw in some more fans, get fans more excited, and overall just increase the quality of the card. I have a couple fights in mind. I'm going to share them with you in a second. But first off, Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane. What a fight that is. I mean, Francis Ngannou has ungodly power. He goes out there and starches Stipe Miocic last year, KOs him. I believe it was in the second round. Ciryl Gane fights Derek Lewis, outclasses him, earns the interim belt. It was a weird time to put on that interim title fight, but it is what it is. They're going to unify the belts. I love the stylistic matchups. I don't care about that interim belt. I don't care about the storyline of them unifying the belts. Former teammates, great fighters. You have the stylistic differences in them where Ciryl Gane's super technical and well-rounded, where Francis Ngannou just wants to go out there and just knock your head off your shoulders. So I cannot wait for this fight. I have no idea what's going to happen. Obviously, I'll be breaking it down as we get closer to the fight. The co-main event is Brandon Moreno defending his flyweight title against Deiveson Figueiredo. This is the third time they're going to fight. It's the trilogy. And this fight, while it's a decent fight, I don't feel like a lot of people care about this fight. Brandon Moreno absolutely outclassed Deiveson Figueiredo in their last fight. Now, I don't know if there's a reason for that. Deiveson Figueiredo hasn't came out with some excuse. The first fight was a hard-fought fight, and it went to a draw, and arguably Deiveson Figueiredo should have won if he didn't get a point taken away earlier in the fight. But after that last performance by Brandon Moreno, I really had no desire to see Figueiredo fight him again. And because Alexander Pantoja couldn't be ready, he has 2 wins over Brandon Moreno, the current champion. He couldn't be ready for this January date. Deiveson Figueiredo got it by default. And also, there was supposed to be a fight between Alex Perez and Askar Askarov a month or 2 ago, and that fight got canceled. Otherwise, that could have been the potential next #1 contender. So by default, Deiveson Figueiredo is really only getting a shot because a couple other guys who are in line couldn't make it to the fight on that particular date. So as far as the changes on the card, Derek Brunson versus Jared Cannonier was supposed to be the featured fight on the card. That's an amazing middleweight fight. I love the stylistic matchup. Can Derek Brunson go out there and prove everyone wrong again, take Jared Cannonier down, hold him down, ground and pound him? And this was going to be a #1 contender fight. Izzy has cleaned out the division for the most part. Izzy's fighting Robert Whittaker on UFC 271. So the winner of Derek Brunson versus Jared Cannonier was going to be next in line for that title, especially if Izzy wins. If Robert Whittaker wins the month after that at UFC 271, then we're going to see a trilogy between them two. But if Izzy wins, Derek Brunson versus Jared Cannonier is solidifying the #1 contender. So the UFC decided to move that to UFC 271 in February. I feel like they're just doing that in case Whittaker or Izzy pulls out. They can easily shuffle one of those guys into the title fight without having to pay a potential backup. They basically have 2 backups by default, so they can easily have a replacement if one of those guys fall out. But the rest of the card, now that card has shifted, now that fight has shifted from UFC 270 to 271, the card does not look that good. You have Greg Hardy versus Alexei Oleinik on the main card. Come on now. You have Movsar Evloev versus Ilia Topuria on the main card. I think that's a great fight for up-and-coming guys at featherweight. But still, this is not like it's driving, casuals or masses of MMA fans to be super excited. Really, the only thing to get super excited for on this card is Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane. So I really do, and I was talking about this on the live stream, that the UFC could potentially add a huge fight to this card to just make it a little bit better. And I have a couple options for you. The first fight that I think is a chance the UFC adds it to UFC 270 is Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. And who wouldn't love this fight? We've seen the UFC kind of adopt this strategy before. Originally, UFC 262 last year needed some extra drawing power. They added Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards. Unfortunately, it didn't happen on that date. Nate Diaz had to pull out, and they had to reschedule it for UFC 263. But Nate Diaz is always training. He's always in shape. And even if he's not, he's always willing to accept a fight for the right paycheck. Tony Ferguson's been out for a while. He would definitely take a fight against, Nate Diaz, and that would be a crazy fight. I mean, and who doesn't want to see that? Hardcore MMA fans, casual MMA fans, everyone would get behind Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. And we've seen it even, you look back at UFC 266 where they put Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler on there. I guarantee the UFC felt Nick Diaz on that card in their pockets. Nick Diaz was drawing in people to buy that card, without a doubt. And Nate does the same thing. They add him to UFC 270. They make that main card a little bit better. And we get Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. And, I mean, is there any way that fight sucks? Imagine Nate Diaz and Tony Ferguson just battling it out. We talk about 5 rounds, no title, no main event. Nate and Nick are the only 2 fighters to ever have a 5-round non-title, non-main event. I honestly want to make Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. Make it 10 rounds. These guys have ungodly cardio, and I would love to see them fight each other in a 10-round fight. I know that's not possible, but bare minimum, if they do make that fight, they better make it 5 rounds. Anything less than 5 rounds is an absolute sham in my mind. As far as the next fight that I have for you, and I really have 2 fights, but I almost consider it one because it's the same fighter in those fights. The next one would be Hamzat Chamaya versus Leon Edwards. The UFC has kind of been weird about Hamzat Chamaya. They said they wanted to keep him active. They said they were working on something for him, and then they've been radio silent. And Hamzat Chamaya has been calling out anyone and everyone that he possibly can. The UFC was desperate to book Hamzat Chamaya versus Leon Edwards 3 times between December of 2020 and March of 2021. They rebooked it 3 separate occasions. So I think there's a chance they could rebook it. Apparently Usman's injured. He's going to be sitting out for a little while. So maybe Leon Edwards doesn't get the next title shot. And, for everyone talking about Leon Edwards is inactive, this guy's accepting fights time and time again. He accepted to fight Hamzat 3 times. He accepted to fight Woodley, could not fight him for no fault of his own. Accepted to fight a Colby Covington fight in March of this year when Hamzat pulled out. Eventually accepted a fight with Bilal Muhammad, accepted a fight with Nate Diaz, accepted a fight with Jorge Masvidal that was supposed to happen on 269, and Jorge pulled out. So Leon Edwards, for all the hate he gets, he's accepted so many fights. And if Usman isn't ready to go until maybe, summer or fall, Leon Edwards could say, okay, UFC, pay me good money and I'll fight Hamzat. And the UFC would love that, because if Hamzat can beat Leon Edwards, Hamzat is undoubtedly the #1 contender. And the UFC wants Hamzat Chamaya fighting for a belt in 2022. Without a doubt, his star power is already through the roof. And if he can win a fight against Leon Edwards, it would just blow up from there. And imagine if he became champion, imagine the numbers he would do as far as pay-per-view goes. So the next fight that I have for you is I'm just going to give you both of them at the same time. And it's basically Hamzat Chamaya versus anyone. It could be Hamzat Chamaya versus Neil Magny. Neil Magny's been calling for that fight forever. But also Hamzat Chamaya versus Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns has shown that he's willing to accept any fight. And I think that the UFC, they want to add a little bit extra to that UFC 270 card. And, I think Leon Edwards would be their first choice, because I think Leon Edwards is a more manageable opponent for Hamzat rather than Gilbert Burns, at least in the UFC's mind. But I think the UFC would also settle for Neil Magny. I don't think they want to put him against Neil Magny, because it's just a lose-lose situation. Even if Hamzat wins, nobody's going to be all that impressed with a win over Neil Magny. Neil Magny's been out-grappled many of times. I'm not trying to trash Neil Magny. He's a well-rounded, decent fighter, but it's not like Hamzat's going to get that push that the UFC wants with a win over Neil Magny. So that's why I think the Neil Magny fight's going to be a last resort. I think they're going to try to book him against Leon Edwards. I think they're going to try to book him against Gilbert Burns. And if that fails, they're going to book him against Neil Magny. So realistically, I think we get one of these matchups. I could be wrong. I've called a lot of stuff before. I called the Dan Hooker versus Islam fight on UFC 267. This is just an idea. I have no evidence to back any of this up, but I think it's a real possibility. Just looking at the quality of UFC 270, we get an amazing fight added to the card. It really needs it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.